Think about the last time you stood in your favorite fabric store. Or maybe you were scrolling through pages and pages of designs online, looking for just the right print. You knew exactly what you wanted for your next project. You could see the color palette in your mind. You knew the exact scale of the motif that you needed to make your quilt or your sewing project really work. But it wasn't there. It didn't exist. You couldn't find it. You left the store empty-handed, or you settled for something that was just okay. But what if you could have made it yourself? Let me tell you about Marie. Marie has been quilting since 1980. She's a highly skilled long-arm quilter who works on other people's prized quilts. She's designed her own quilting patterns. She was even featured on TV, showing audiences how to construct incredibly complex art quilts. She knew how to think about scale, layout, color, all with her eyes closed. At one point in her career, someone prominent in the fabric industry noticed her incredible eye for design and asked her to design a commercial fabric line. But she ended up saying no. Not because she didn't want to, but because she had a very full life. She was running 2 beauty shops. She was raising a teenage daughter. And there was actually one specific roadblock that stopped her cold. She actually didn't have the digital software knowledge to execute it. Decades later, Marie enrolled in my Doodles coaching week. She told me, I want to learn to design fabric using Adobe Illustrator. And she admitted to me that for the first 3 days of the Doodles coaching week, she felt like she was drowning. But on the 4th day, it started to click. She wrote to me and said, on the 4th day, I got it. Thank you so much for your help. Marie already had the eye for it. For 40 years, she had the eye for it. She just needed the key to unlock the last door. Welcome to the Creative Business Spark podcast. I'm LaFollette, creative entrepreneur, online educator, and business coach. After getting laid off in my late 50s, I found myself adrift with no income and no sense of self. But my mom always said, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward. So I decided to reinvent myself and build an online creative business from scratch. Now I help women like you do the same. This podcast is where art, mindset, and entrepreneurship meet. I'll share behind-the-scenes lessons, inspiring stories, mindset shifts, and more. Let this be the spark you need to build or grow a creative business with joy and purpose. Let's dive in because it's never too late to create. Welcome back to the show. If you have spent years or even decades choosing fabrics for quilts, garments, or home sewing projects, I have a beautiful secret to share with you today. You already think exactly like a professional surface pattern designer. You just don't know it. Today, we're going to talk about the 3 truths about your creative eye that you have been using your entire life, and what it actually takes to finally put your own art onto fabric that is entirely yours. So let's unroll a bolt of inspiration and dive right in. Truth number 1. You have been doing the work of a surface pattern designer for years. When you stand at that cutting table or you scroll through design feeds, you aren't just making casual consumer choices. You are making major, sophisticated design decisions. Think about the mental checklist that you run through. You look at a bolt and you ask yourself, is this motif too large for a 4-inch quilt block? Is this print going to compete with my border fabric? Or do they play nicely together? Will this busy floral work as a background, or is it going to fight with my focal print? And how is this repeat going to interact with my seam lines when I cut into it? Those are the exact same editorial and technical decisions a professional surface pattern designer makes when she's building a collection for either a major textile manufacturer or for her own quilt projects or sewing projects. When you evaluate whether a large-scale botanical print will read correctly when it's chopped up into the teeny pieces you put in a quilt, you're managing scale and you're thinking about motif integrity. When you pair a subtle tone-on-tone fabric with a wild, busy print to give the viewer's eyes a place to rest, you're engineering visual hierarchy. Every time you touch a yard of fabric, you're engaging in high-level, skilled designer thinking. Take Vicky, for example. Vicky has been making these exact fabric decisions since she was just 8 years old. Today, she's around 67, and she has spent nearly 6 decades screen printing, weaving, knitting, embellishing clothing, and making quilts. She possesses a master-level understanding of textile scale, geometry, and color. And yet when Vicky first introduced herself to me, do you know what she said? She said, "I have very little confidence as an artist, except specifically in textiles. I don't see myself as someone who can draw." All of those years of absolute textile mastery, and she still didn't feel qualified to call herself a designer or an artist. It broke my heart, but I see it all the time. Here's what I want you to hear down in your bones. The creative thinking that you apply every time you select, arrange, and combine fabrics is precisely what surface pattern design requires. In fact, research out of the Lindenwood University on fiber arts and cognition confirms that activities like quilting and weaving significantly enhance spatial reasoning, which is the exact psychological ability to mentally calculate scale, composition, and how visual elements interact across a surface. You aren't a novice starting from scratch. You have been training for this career or side hustle for decades. You just didn't know that your passion had a technical name. This brings us to truth number 2, which addresses a big fear that I hear from the quilting and sewing community. Whenever I suggest designing fabric, women often look at me with hesitation and say, "Anne, I don't want to sit at a computer screen all day. I fell in love with fabric because it's tactile, and I love using my hands. I love to sew and to create beautiful quilts. If I wanted a desk job, I'd go back to the corporate world." And I hear you. I totally hear you, and I completely agree. So let's set the record straight right now. Designing your own fabric does not begin on the screen, and it doesn't end on the screen. It begins exactly where your creative life already lives, right there with your hands. It starts with a physical pencil and a sketchbook, a watercolor brush dipped in a palette of colors that you love, a simple, imperfect doodle of a leaf in the margin of a notebook, or a little flower drawn with a black pen on a piece of printer paper. That is where every single beautiful surface pattern design begins. Every single time. It also comes from walking outside and taking photographs and then using the inspiration from those photographs to create your designs. Let me pull back the curtain and show you what the workflow actually looks like, because I think that you'll recognize yourself in it. First, you spend 10 or 20 minutes sitting quietly with your sketchbook, drawing a few simple marks or shapes that feel uniquely like you. No masterpiece required. Then you simply take out your phone, you snap a quick picture of your drawing, and you bring that image into Adobe Illustrator. From there, you follow the exact step-by-step sequence that I teach inside my Doodles coaching week to transform that little phone photograph into a perfect, seamlessly repeating repeat. It's a repeat that can be scaled up to a massive wallpaper print, or it can be shrunk down for a delicate fat quarter or printed into any textile type that you desire. Your hands start the work, and the computer does the middle part, and then in the end, you're holding on to a real piece of fabric or a real piece of wrapping paper in your hands in real life. The computer multiplies what your hands create, but it never replaces them. Academic research in design creativity shows that the physical act of sketching isn't just a fun warm-up exercise. It is actually the fluid process of design thinking itself. Sketching allows your brain to generate new visual ideas in real time and not just record them. The best designers in the world know this intuitively. They doodle first with their hands, and then they let technology do some of the heavy lifting of getting it into a repeat. And because you've spent years working with textiles, your hands and your eyes already possess a deep wisdom about color harmonies, scale, and pattern interaction that a total beginner might spend months trying to study in textbooks. You already have that magic in your fingertips. Our third and final truth today is the most liberating one of all. One single digital skill is the only thing standing between you and a bolt of fabric that is entirely designed by you. Let's look back at Marie with her 40 years of rich quilting experience. She has the eye, she has impeccable taste, and she had incredible experience with intuitive design instincts. All she needed to do was learn how to create a repeating pattern inside Adobe Illustrator. And think about how powerful that transformation was for her, because it wasn't a lack of talent, it wasn't a lack of creativity, and she didn't need to spend years going back to college to get a degree. She just needed to learn the exact steps inside Adobe Illustrator to create a repeating pattern that's working. And when Vicky, our master textile artist, joined the Doodles Coaching Week, she was completely convinced that she couldn't draw. But she quickly discovered that designing fabric doesn't require fine art realism. It requires your unique perspective, simple, quirky, authentic marks that become the raw material for a gorgeous repeating pattern. Vicky wrote to me after the program and said, "What sold me was the excitement and joy I felt in creating the 2 patterns that I made. That sold me, and I really wanted more." That is the exact moment that I live for as an educator. It's that beautiful epiphany when a woman who has spent her whole life loving, sewing, cutting, and buying fabric suddenly realizes, oh my goodness, I can be designing these myself. And learning this skill isn't about transforming into a completely different kind of creative person. It's simply about adding one single tool to the beautiful creative life you've built already. And because you already have that lifelong foundation of working with fabric, this new skill attaches to your brain incredibly fast. Educational research on how adults learn proves that new knowledge is absorbed most effectively when it can anchor itself directly to our existing life experience and understanding. You aren't starting from absolute zero. You're just adding the final perfect key to a door that you've been standing in front of for years. And that is exactly what we do together inside the Doodles Coaching Week. It's my completely beginner-friendly coaching program. I walk you through the process of taking your very first simple doodles and turning them into a gorgeous, seamlessly repeating pattern in Adobe Illustrator. You do not need a single ounce of prior software experience. You also don't need a design background. I do not have a design background myself. I was in corporate forever, and my jobs were not on the design side or the creative side of the business. You don't need any fancy drawing skills either. You just need a pen, a piece of paper, and the time that it takes to invest in learning the steps. And it's going to change the way you look at every yard of fabric that you ever buy again. Right now, you can claim your space in our next cohort, which starts on June 22nd. You'll join an incredible community of women just like Marie and Vicky, who discovered that the eye they spent a lifetime building was already more than enough to succeed as a surface pattern designer. You can look in the show notes for the link to enroll, or just go to members.artwithann.com/doodles to claim your space. The fabric that you've always wanted to sew with, or the fabrics that you've always wanted to make a quilt with, now is the time to make it happen. Imagine opening your door a few weeks from now and you've just been delivered a yard of fabric. You're unfolding it on your cutting mat and you're running your fingers over a pattern that started as a pencil mark in your own sketchbook. That is the magic that's waiting for you. Before you head off to your sewing room today, I want to know, what is the one fabric print you have searched for forever but have never been able to find? The one that you would design yourself if you knew how. Leave a comment below here on YouTube because I read every single one. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, please share it with a friend. This might be exactly the message they need to hear today. I always like to say in closing that I'm Anne LaFollette. And remember, it's never too late to create. That's it for today, and I'll see you again next week.